Hello people. As I try to come up with cool shit that I have not done before on this channel, I thought I'll do a voiceover so newbies or whoever watches this can get a quick crash course as to why people want to spend so much money on a keyboard. Today I am going to be talking shit while building this keyboard. It is a Lin Montage with a clean black anodizing. This board is a classic top-mount Korean design custom and something that I have always wanted. As you can see, this keyboard is a standard boring as fuck rectangle that was designed in Korea by Linworks. This keyboard has a big-ass brass weight at the back, and there is a cool polished badge saying Montage that you cannot see when you are using this. This keyboard was originally released 4 years ago in 2019 with 50 units being available. This keyboard is made with a grade 6061 Aluminium and has a 6.5 degree typing angle. The unit I got came with a default 1.5mm aluminum plate as well as a 1.5mm polycarbonate plate. The cool thing about this board is that it was designed to be either top-mounted, bottom-mounted, or sandwich-mounted. It will be built top-mounted with the retooled blacks on the aluminum plate. Although this board is not one of the more coveted collectible Korea top mounts, I am still happy in picking this one up. I have been in this money sink for around 3 years at this point, and it has been pretty interesting and expensive. I have also seen the change in community preference through this time and how this interest has evolved. Originally starting in the 20th century with Cherry Incorporated making their famous Cherry mix switches and producing their mechanical keyboards that boasted excellent craftsmanship, the quality of the keyboards being produced got worse with membrane keyboards. As technology advanced and keyboards were more overlooked, no one really gave a shit about keyboards. However, in 2006, custom keyboards were born with the first ever custom keyboard emerging from Korea. The DK Saver, now an unobtainable holy grail for many collectors, was the first full aluminum chassis top-mount board that featured the absence of the window key as a throwback to the past. This board was also noticed by the brand Philco, and it helped this layout to gain popularity as Philco started mass-producing this layout. This led to other enthusiasts from Korea also coming up with their own designs and running small runs for their own keyboards, and what I would consider the most iconic boards of all time. Other famed designers include Odd, Lifezone, Comac, Duck, and Lineworks. These creators designed what people now call customs with a K to indicate the board coming from Korea. Although just a keyboard, they were designed with the desire for the best possible user experience, and certain boards are designed for a certain type of switch, which the designer believes will result in the best experience when using the board. Although extremely old, many current-day designs can be seen being inspired from these boards, proving how timeless and well thought through these designs were. For example, there's the Odd 306 dikes, which had a side profile that is copied up to now and has been dubbed Corsa sides. The Odd 356 Cool was also the first board to have an angled side and to have a brass weight included for an elevated experience. Duck keyboards were also the first kind of keyboard to have such a heavy emphasis on Rob, which has influenced other kinds of more modern boards today. There are many other highly collectible boards that have been produced by these designers, and these high-end keyboards slowly made their way to the other parts of the world. The point where these classic boards started becoming more and more modern was when Malaysian designer by the name of Sam created Tiger and created his own take on high-end keyboard, coming up with probably the most iconic keyboard brand of all time. Boards like Tiger Jane were released with later iterations, featuring a Toblerone weight that is copied by like fucking everyone now. That two-layer looking design on the bottom of their board was definitely ahead of its time and told newer keyboard designers to start being more original and less boring. Other boards like the Tiger Alice created a whole other layout of keyboard that people felt was more ergonomic and wanted to use, as well as Tiger 910, which was probably the first 65 board that made use of a top right blocker. Today these features have been used a lot and can be seen in many passion projects. Up till 2014, Cherry switches were used. However, once the Cherry Mix patent expired and Cherry Mix clones started coming out onto the market, this would eventually lead to a switch version of a zombie apocalypse. The earliest players were companies like Gateron and Zeal, who started making switches like Black Inks and Zelios. In the world of switches, there were a bunch of controversies and heated debates with Stelios and Holy Panda being a fan favorite, but I honestly can't give a fuck about these, and it was a huge mess. However, they led to manufacturer juke spamming switches into the market like crazy, leading to the infinite number of switches that are available in the market today. Switches also started being mixed around to produce a more niche kind of sound and feel that people liked. For example, Black Cherry Pies dumped a cream stem, a cherry top, and a random bottom. There were Creamrons, cherry top Telios, etc., 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 which has led to long pole switches being a thing now where these coveted characteristics are put into one switch for 1/4 the price. Many people come excitedly shopping to make their first custom keyboard to get away from their scratchy cherry mix blacks and their shitty cherry mix blacks and their shitty cherry mix browns chasing the smoothest possible switch, while eventually, in the most final stage of this obsession, everyone wants to go back to cherry mix black as they understand that cherry switches are actually king, which is why you might have noticed that a lot of more recent boards have cherry switches in them. In 2017, an American company was born which I feel was the starting point of this modern day and age of keyboards. Keycult, the name that people literally associated with Jesus in the keyboard space, releasing their famous number 110 keyless keyboard in a private sale. It eventually got sold to the public in 2019. However, Keycult had created their own mounting style, the mysterious gasket mount. Their first version was the foam strips on both the top and bottom of the plate for it to rest on, which fully isolated the plate from making any contact with the case, causing an isolated typing experience with no resonance if executed correctly. On top of that, this board that was designed by them was very complex, with a three-piece construction and a very iconic side profile that had never been seen before. This mounting style took off, and many wanted to copy this hyped-up gasket mount that people thought could make you typing 10 times faster or something. Other designers started to come up like E3. Introducing the Polaris, he came up with his take on the gasket mount on a 60 board. However, this board was extremely cheap for what you were getting, and this board caused a stir letting people know that designing and selling this kind of keyboard did not have to be so costly. The Polaris was, and still is considered an extremely well-designed board. Its version of the gasket mount also introduced what people would know as the more foamy gasket sound, and this was the general trend that keyboards would start to take. Gone were the days of classic top-mount keyboards. Gasket mount was all the rave now. Full keyboard kit for $95 US. People obviously thought they took too much DMT or something. But it was true. It was 2020, and Novel Keys had created a full keyboard kit for $95 used. Budget keyboards seem to actually live up to its name now. Following this, budget keyboards like the Portico 65 were put on sale as people realized that nice keyboards could be sold for cheap prices. These were insanely popular. After these boards like the D65 and Cabe 60, 7 Lights started being created. Cheap boards started featuring the famous gasket mount inside them. However, 1 year later, Alabs released their Jelly Epic and the whole scene shifted again. This new company's latest release had a special kind of foam inside it which gave it this new marbly sound that people fell in love with. This started the foam hype where designers were holding competitions on who can stuff the most foam into their keyboards and make their keyboards sound the worst, I mean the most foamy. On top of that, Alabs invented a much more efficient way of gasket mounting using their sock gaskets. This board also caused people to feel that the more flexy their keyboard, the faster they typed, which resulted in many designers turning their PCB to Swiss cheese to appeal to the wider audience. On top of that, the T-Gear Unicorn and the Bakaneko released, which caused there to be a lot of hype for keyboards that were O-ring mounted. Therefore, most of the things that can be noted on upcoming group buys are boards boasting the cheapest prices that are offered either O-ring or gasket boards with a lot of customizability for beginners. There is no longer the appeal and the need for people to buy high-end boards anymore, as there are many fantastic budget and mid-range options that are on the market. Although I think that this is a very good time for a newbie to get into the hobby, I'm pretty bored with how most keyboard these days sound around the same, and this is likely the last board that I will be picking up for myself, although I do have more sound tests that are lined up. However, seeing the very interesting kinds of innovations that companies are trying to do these days like Mode's lettuce mounting, Novel Keys stem inserts, and that matrix board that had hinges for you to separate the two housings have been quite interesting to see, although personally, a classic T-Kel Aluminium plate that is top mounted with no flex cuts or anything would be what makes me the happiest. If you made it to this point, I'm actually surprised. Thanks for listening.